So welcome friends. Today I am going to discuss about IR spectroscopy. So without wasting any time, let's start. Say any physical stimulus is given to a molecule and that response is detected by an instrument. Well, here, as the name suggests, IR spectroscopy, that physical stimulus must be IR radiation. Well, upon irradiation with infrared light, certain bonds respond by vibrating faster, which can be detected and translated into a visual representation. Well, what is that? What is called? You have guessed it right, that is called a spectrum. Well, unlike UV visible spectroscopy, where we were using UV visible light, where electronic transitions were seen, here in IR spectroscopy, molecular vibrations are seen. So what happens basically is that the sample, as we know, consists of molecules which are in continuous motion with each other. And then when IR radiation of different wavelength and energy is applied, the sample either absorbs it or transmits it depending upon the circumstances. So basically the interatomic bond vibrates and then the IR spectra gives a characteristic functional groups and bonds. Well, you all must be wondering that IR light consists of near IR range, mid IR range, and far IR range. So, which range we should be using here? Well, we generally use mid IR range only, which is from 2.5 to 15 micrometer and from 4000 to 667 wave number. Well, why I have mentioned wave number also, I shall discuss about it later. Well, now you must all have the question that why mid-IR range will be used, why not near or why not far IR range. Well, to answer this, that the interaction of mid-IR radiation provides a spectral fingerprint. Well, what is that? The fingerprints is useful for the identification of sample. We will be discussing about fingerprint later on. The peaks and troughs in a mid-IR spectrum are very specific to the sample measured. So to get a better idea of our sample, we choose mid-IR range generally. Now, as we have understood that basically the infrared radiation is used, which induces molecular vibrations in covalent bonds, and specific bonds respond to specific frequencies. And as just now I have discussed that IR range frequency, so the important thing to note here is that the unit which is used in IR spectrum is not wavelength but is wave number. Well, as you can see in the diagram, this slide, that one wave number is basically 1 by wavelength. And also frequency is wave number into light. So according to this derivation, we get frequency is equal to c by lambda. Well, so point to notice here is that wave numbers are directly proportional to frequency. Well, as I have just mentioned, that when any physical stimulus is given to a sample, then the sample vibrates. Okay. Well, the value of stretching vibrational frequency of bond is easily determined by Hooke's law. Well, what is Hooke's law? It basically states that the vibrational frequency of a bond is directly proportional to its bond strength and inversely proportional to the masses at the end of the bond. And due to this Hooke's law, the frequency of vibration of any chemical depends on the mass of the atoms involved and strength of the bond. So therefore, strong bonds oscillate with a higher frequency and also have a higher wave number. So to recap, just as IR radiation is irradiated to a sample, the bonds in the molecule of the sample can vibrate with a certain frequency and energy that is specific to that bond, just like masses vibrate on springs, which may be stretching vibrations or bending vibrations. Well, here you can see that there are two types of vibrations. One is stretching vibrations and one is bending vibrations. Well, if you carefully observe the picture, then you can see that in stretching vibrations, whether it is symmetric stretching or whether it is asymmetric stretching, here bond length is changes. Here bond length is changing. In symmetrical stretching, which suggests that both the stretching is on the same side, there too you can see that bond length is increasing. and in asymmetric stretching, where it is in opposite direction, here also bond length is changing. But when it comes to bending vibrations, there are again two types of vibrations: in-plane vibrations or out-plane vibrations. Well, in in-plane vibrations, you can see there is one scissoring and another is rocking vibrations. Well, if you can see in this picture that in scissoring, both are moving like a scissor. Like when we cut paper using a scissor, the movement of scissor is exactly same here. As we can see that the bond angle is changing. But in rocking vibration, you can see that the bond angle is same and these are moving in the same direction. Well, these were not out of plane, okay? But in twisting and wedging, in twisting and wagging vibrations, you can see that it is moving out of the plane. In twisting, both are happening opposite direction, but in wagging, both are happening in the same direction. Well, now vibrational modes can be decided by a formula that which molecule will have how many vibrational modes. Well, suppose say carbon dioxide, it is a linear molecule, and if it is a linear molecule, then the formula will be 3 and minus 5. Where according to the formula, as carbon dioxide, it has three molecules, C1 and oxygen 2. So total three molecules are there. So according to the formula, 3 into 3 minus 5, 9 minus 5, it will be showing 4 vibrations. Now say if it's a linear non-linear molecule, then the formula will be changed a little bit and the formula will be 3 and minus 6. Well, as we have all studied about vibrational frequencies now. Well, there are certain factors here also which affects vibrational frequency, namely coupled vibrations, hydrogen bonding, Fermi resonance. Well, there are some electronic effects too which affects vibrational frequency. For example, mesomeric effect, inductive effect. We'll say if there is positive inductive effect, then wave number gets decreased, and if there is negative inductive effect, wave number gets increased. Now here comes another thing that after the molecules in the sample were vibrated by an IR light, okay, it can absorb either some frequencies and transmit the rest. Now the question is when it will absorb those frequencies and when it will transmit the rest. Well, only those molecules which will have a change in the dipole moment will be IR active. If there is zero dipole moment, if there is no dipole moment, then it is IR inactive. Well, as the specific chemical bonds have specific vibrational energy values, for different chemical bonds, frequency will be different obviously. Now, if frequency of oscillation will not match, then the electronegative wave will be transmitted. However, if it matches, then it will be absorbed, and that way we can say that we can analyze different types of functional groups exist within that molecule. So the point to notice here is that different functional group bend, stretch, or wag at different frequencies, and a functional group will absorb light at the frequency of light if it matches the frequency of wagging, bending, stretching, etc. Well, now till now we have studied a principle. Now, how to apply it? Well, you can see in this slide that on the one hand there is dispersive eye spectroscopy, and on the other hand there is non-dispersive eye spectroscopy. So there must be some difference. As the name suggests, in non-dispersive eye spectroscopy, the IR radiation from a source is not dispersed according to wavelength by a prism, as in the standard dispersive IR spectrophotometer. So let's first study about dispersive eye spectroscopy. Well, here as we can see that the radiation source is going towards mirror, via which radiation comes to reference cell and sample cell, and after which it again goes to the mirror and the beam chopper reflects into monochromata, which converts it into a suitable range monochromatic radiation, and then the detector detects it. Well, now you must all think that if there is IR source, then there must be some criteria that why do we need to select this thing only as an IR source? Well, in order to select an radiation source, we need to keep certain things in mind. Like in winter season, we wear woolen clothes. Why? Because it will give us warmth. We don't wear light clothes in winter. So while selecting our clothes there must be some criteria, then even in a radiation source of air there are certain criteria. For example, it must be continuous over the wavelength used, and it should cover a wide wavelength range, as and it should be constant over a long period of time. Well, generally, nurse glower and glober are used as the radiation source, but nurse glower is much preferred. Why? Actually, nurse glower is consists of oxides of zirconium, whiterium, and erbium. There is a hollow rod which is non-conducting at room temperature. Now there is a problem that as it is non-conducting at room temperature, so heating is required here. So you may think that if heating is required here, it is non-conducting at room temperature, then how it is better? Actually, even glober, which is nothing but a rod of silicon carbide, there also heating is essential. So in both the cases, in nurse glower also, in glober also, heating is essential. But actually, nurse glower produces more intense air radiation and it gives a wide air range. So nurse glower is more advantageous than glober. Now, then coming to sampling, you can see here that a reference cell is there and then sample cell is there. So as the name suggests, in the sample cell, a sample will be there, but in reference cell, sample will not be there. Well, so while selecting something in reference cell, we must need to keep one thing in mind, that we should not put anything in a reference cell which will itself absorb daylight. Okay, so generally KBR is used as a reference cell, is used in a reference cell. Why? It transmits all the IR radiation and it is transferred throughout the IR radiation. Now coming to sample cell, sample sampling can be done via four types: solid sampling, liquid sampling, gaseous sampling, and solution sampling technique. Well, in solid sampling technique, again we can do it via four types. Direct sampling, as the name suggests, we just put all the samples and analyze it. Then there comes pelletization technique. Well, here either KBR or NaCl are used for the preparation of pellet. As the name suggests, here pellets will be used, which are generally of KBR and NaCl. These act as diluent and these are also transparent for IR radiation. So what do we do here is that generally take the sample, mix it with KBR or NaCl in a simple pestle and mortar. After mixing, put it into KBR press where pellets will be formed. Now here even in reference cell also KBR pellet as a reference will be used, but where only KBR is there, but in sample both KBR and sample are there. Well, if we what are the advantages of using KBR plates? That it can be stored for a comparatively longer period of time and it also gives a better resolution. Well, apart from solid sampling technique and periodization technique, there is Mullin technique also where we use paste or mud, and then there comes solid sampling for solution. Well, apart from solid sampling technique, even liquids can be used. Well, I'll rather call it sandwich technique. Why I will call it sandwich technique? That here what we do is basically we put a NaCl pellet, then we put a liquid on it, and then again an NaCl pellet is used. So sandwich technique. Now then there is gas sampling technique where gas cells are used, which is of generally of 10 centimeter and is made up of NaCl. Then there comes solution sampling technique where limited number of solutions are used, like unlike UV. Here limited number of solutions are used like chloroform, carbon tetrachloride, CH2, that is carbon disulfide. Well, one thing we need to keep in the entire sampling technique is that never ever use water here. Why? As water will itself absorb under IR radiation. Now, if it will itself absorb under IR radiation, then we will get faulty data, na? As we need to determine that what is the functional group in our sample, we need to identify our compound, where in which frequency, in which wave number it absorbs or it transmits. So if water itself will absorb some IR radiation, then we will not get our desired result. Now, as the radiation will pass through samples and reference cell, it will again go towards the mirror. Ultimately, it will go towards a beam chopper. As we can see in the picture, that it is basically operated by a motor. So, what does it does? That it basically sends radiation At one time it will send radiation from a reference cell, and at another time it will send radiation from a sample holder, respectively towards mirror. Now then there is monochromator. Well, we generally use prism as a monochromator, which are made up of generally of alkali metal halides, say NaCl, KBr, LiF. Apart from prism, we can also use gratings. Well, what are these? These are nothing but there are a small tiny prism like structure which acts as monochromator. Well, gratings are generally advanced version of monochromator. Why? I am saying it as advanced version of monochromator as it is generally made up of materials like aluminium which are not attacked by moisture. So it is more advantageous, and it also is a considerable wavelength, so it can absorb most of the wavelength, so it is more preferred. Now then there comes detectors. Well, indeed, coming to detector, various types of detectors can be used here too. Well, the first one is bolometer. Bolometer is nothing but there is a thin metal conductor which depends upon the change of the current flow. And when IR radiation comes to the surface of bolometer, the temperature increases, due to which ultimately resistance decreases, and then current flow changes, and then it's recorded. Then apart from bolometer, there is thermocouple. What is that? Here, two dissimilar wires are used, and due to temperature difference, there is potential difference. So one in there is a hot end and other there is cold end. Well, there are some type of adjustment that when IR radiation comes, then only one end receives that and it becomes a little bit hot and other remains cold. So due to potential difference, there is current flow, and then it is recorded. Well, apart from bolometer and thermocouple, even thermistor, Gauge detector, photoconductivity detector, semi-conductivity detector, ampli are used, and then amplifier is there and recorder is there. Well, to sum up, the nurse glower or glober, that is the IR radiation source is electrically heated to produce IR radiation. Then the radiation goes towards both the mirror. Same, the former one is the upper one is mirror one, and the latter one is mirror two. Then from mirror one from upwards, it goes towards a reference cell and then pass through the reference material KBr without decreasing radiation, as here our sample is not there. And then from mirror two, that is the lower mirror, sends the radiation from sample cell. It absorbs it and it is transmits, its intensity is decreased. Now when IR reaches beam chopper, it alternatively sends radiation from reference cell and sample holder respectively towards the mirror. Now this keeps happening alternatively. Now what happens is that detector determines that which frequency it will absorb and which frequency it will transmit. Now according to this, the intensity of absorbed radiations will be decreased and amplified will amplify it, and finally recorded will be recording it. Where if there is dispersive spectrophotometer, then there is non-dispersive spectrophotometer. Well, here what happens is that radiation from an IR source is not chopped by a rotating device, so that it alternatively passes through the sample or a reference cell. Well, both the beams are incident on a detector which is filled with a gas, and as we can see in the diagram, the detector is divided with a two compartments with a flexible diaphragm. If you notice the diagram carefully, you will be able to see that the relatively amounts of IR radiation absorbed by carbon monoxide in the two sections of detector are determined by the CO level in the sample. Well, due to the difference in the amount of IR radiation is absorbed, the two compartments, then it ultimately gives to rise to a temperature difference so that a diaphragm, even to a slight extent, can be measured with an accuracy of 5%. So this was all about dispersive and non-dispersive spectrophotometer. Then comes their Fourier transformation infrared spectroscopy. As the name suggests, here a Fourier transformation method is used. Where here basically almost everything is same, but difference is that here there is interferometer which consists of a moving mirror and a stationary mirror, and the beam splitter splits radiation to both the mirror and again reflects back to the beam splitter. Well, here also this here one thing is there, that one end there is stationary mirror and at one end there is moving mirror, that is it will move. Here what happens is that, say the moving mirror has not moved and there is zero part difference, ZPD, zero part difference between moving mirror and stationary mirror. So what happens, as you can see in the diagram, that as both the valley and the peak of the both the waves are same, so constructive interference happens, due to which intensity becomes high. And now say the moving mirror has moved towards a little bit. Well, as you can see in the picture, that the distance between the valley and the peak, distance between both the peak is lambda. So say it has moved by lambda by 2. In this picture, you can clearly understand that what is lambda by 2. So say it has moved lambda by 2 further, due to which what happens, now both has become different, and due to which destructive interference happens and less intensity light is there. Now this goes to the sample and then it is recorded, and at the end a Fourier transformation is used, that is a mathematical formula. Well, in the case of dispersive and non-dispersive spectrophotometer, you have seen that in a non-dispersive spectrophotometer, there was a ambient carbon dioxide detector. Basically, for most of the time, a non-dispersive spectrophotometer is used to detect pollutants. But in case of FTIR, it is used in almost all the places where earlier dispersive IR spectrophotometer was used. Well, what are the advantages of FTIR spectrophotometer over the traditional spectrophotometer is that here the data collection speed is more, and there is also ease of maintenance. So now how to interpret IR spectroscopy? Well, we get to see certain types of graphs like this. Well, here, presence or absence of specific functional groups can be seen. It also provides a molecular fingerprint which can be used when comparing samples. Well, if two pure samples display the same IR spectrum, it can be argued that they are the same compound. Well, as I have earlier discussed that mid-IR is used and it gives a characteristic functional group. Well, here if you can see that the picture, that orange, green, where it has been marked, you can see that from 4000 to 2500 centimeter inverse, generally there is absorption of single bonds formed by hydrogen and other elements, OH, NH, CH, etc. Well, between 2500 to 2000, there is absorption of triple bonds. From 2000 to 1500, there is absorption of double bonds, and from 1500 to 400 wave number, it consists of a complicated band which is called fingerprint region. And here, if there is more complexity, then there is more uniqueness. Now, how can you differentiate? Say you have taken alcohols and acid. Well, we all know that in all alcohols there is OH group, even in acids there is OH group. In alcohols there is CO group, in acids there is CO group. So if you do the IR spectroscopy for acid and alcohol, you will get an absorbance region of OH of CO. But in acids there is C double bond O2, which is not there in alcohol. So via this way we can differentiate between acids and alcohols. Well, now coming to aldehydes and ketones. Well, here what happens is that in both the aldehyde and ketone, there is C double bond O group. So we will get a characteristic absorption region of almost same. Well, even other factors determine the absorption region also. But the basic difference is that in aldehyde, there is CH group, but in ketone, there is Cr group. So by this way, you can even differentiate between an aldehyde and a ketone. So according to this, you can interpret there is a chart given. Once you have obtained the graph, then there is a chart. You can match your chart with that. Well, even in IR band, there is a strong band, medium band, and weak band. Well, as you can see that the strong band is covering most of the y-axis, medium, and the medium band one is covering only the half of the y-axis, whereas the weak bond only is only covering the one third of the y-axis. So by this way, you can say that which IR band is strong. Well, coming to the application part, we can identify many of the compounds. We can use it in forensic analysis. As you can see here, there are two pictures. One is basically absorbance versus wave number. One is transmittance versus wave number. You will generally most of the time see that there is transmittance versus wave number graph as it is used normally, but it is not like that the absorbance versus wave number is never used. I have put the picture of absorbance as a wave number in a paper which was about some cancer. You can see that we can determine the certain amounts of biomolecules, the presence of biomolecules. If you carefully observe the picture, you can get the idea that which biomolecules absorb at which range. So it is helpful in determining the biomolecules also. Well, have you noticed one thing that in IR spectroscopy, First there is IR radiation, then sample, and at last monochromator. Unlike UV spectroscopy, in UV spectroscopy, monochromator was before only the sample and radiation cell. Where like each and everything, even IR spectroscopy has limitations, like it cannot be used to determine the purity of the compound, like you cannot analyze a mixture of compounds. It also can determine the molecular weight. Well, where the reaction can be studied, but here gas samples cannot be analyzed as they lack sensitivity. Thank you. If you still have any query, then you can mention me in the comment box, and I will be trying to make some short videos about some details parts of the IR spectroscopy. So this was all about IR spectroscopy. Thank you.